Hello, my name is Stuart Waiton. I'm the chairperson of the Scottish Union for Education. As you can see from the banner behind, we're an organisation set up as a union for parents, teachers and communities who are concerned about education becoming indoctrination. And one of these subjects that we're interested and very concerned about is the transgender ideology being promoted in schools. And I was at a meeting in Aberdeen just this week, actually, and I was challenged to prove that there is this indoctrination taking place in schools. And well, we have Murray Allan with us today. Some of you may know, if you want to see his video, Murray has a video on YouTube, which the one I was looking at is entitled "Kicked Out of Class for Saying There's Only Two Genders." So you get an idea about what that video was about. And essentially it was Murray and a teacher, where Murray had been kicked out of a class for saying there are only two genders. I think I would probably use the term sexes myself, because I think gender confuses anything, but it doesn't matter. You get the point. There are only two genders. That's not very inclusive, sir. And the teacher says, no, it's you who is not inclusive. And the conversation really didn't get much further than that, except to realize that Murray was not allowed, in terms of the school policy, the teacher insisted, it wasn't his opinion, it was the school's opinion, that Murray was not being inclusive, which is why he had to be excluded from class, unable to express his opinion. So I'm absolutely delighted. I was just saying to Murray before I started recording this, that every time I watch his video, I can't help laughing. It shouldn't really be a laughing matter, but it is crazy stuff, and it is probably as clear an example of what is happening at schools at the minute. So welcome, Murray. I'm really pleased you could join me, and people can watch the video, but can you just explain to us what happened at your school?
Absolutely, sure. And first of all, lovely to talk with you today. But yeah, the video that you're speaking about that happened at my secondary school happened. I was 17 at the time. It was back in 2019, and a lot of people have obviously seen the video, as you said. And you know, at that time, but you know, before anything had even happened in the classroom, I already was aware of this stuff being pushed in the school and being taught to us, sort of having it rammed down our throats, so to speak. And I always had that issue with it. And on that specific day when we were in the class, we were doing a sign up for a website to do their university application. Very straightforward. And rather than the teacher just rolling through the process and showing us what we needed to do, he made a big issue out of the fact that on this website, there were only two gender options on the sign up page. And so when the teacher brought that option up and that issue up in the classroom, I then, you know, began talking to him about it and disagreeing with him about it. And he called it old-fashioned, and he called it, you know, this big terrible thing, as if the website was outrageous. And I simply told him, I was like, there are only two genders, so there's no issue with the website. I ended up getting kicked out of the class. And so an hour passed by, and when he finally came to speak to me, I decided to record because I was outraged. I was really angry at what happened.
So this wasn't so okay. So that's interesting, because I'd assumed you were in some sort of RSHP class discussing gender, blah blah, and it was nothing to do with that. It was he, because a website said which gender are you, A or B, male or female. He made a point of saying this obviously is an old-fashioned type of one because there are not just two genders.
Yeah, and also when I'm speaking to him, he's saying, you made an issue out of it. You made an issue. And my response to him at the time was, you made the issue. You know, all we were doing was signing up for a website, and you began talking about how negative it was that there were only two gender options. And so I merely started interacting with that. You know, he posed the issue, and I did a point that countered him. It went against what he was saying. And for that, I was kicked out of class, ultimately expelled from my school. From that whole thing. And you know, I think we'll get into it more as we talk, but that's the sort of key thing that's happening now, this complete intolerance from another perspective. that's happening in schools now, where these issues can be posed to classes and said to the students, and there's no room for disagreement. There's no room for individual thought or interpretation. It's just, you either accept this or you're going to get out of my classroom, you know? And I think when a lot of people saw the video, one of the reasons they were interested in it was because a lot of parents and adults that didn't have this when they were growing up, they weren't even aware of it. And to see it sort of, you know, as highlighted as it was in the video, I think it kind of shocked a lot of people. Like, this is the state of the education system now in
So
Scotland.
you actually got thrown out of school, suspended, and then thrown out of your school.
Yeah, that's an interesting point as well. I could talk about that in detail, but they sort of played politics quite well, really, because the video went viral. I was excluded from school. They told me I would be able to return after a week. And so what ended up happening was, a week passed. I go into the school for a meeting and they say, the video is still all over the internet, so we're going to have you come back in another week. We're going to exclude you for a further week, right? And I go, okay. You know, I didn't have any say in the matter. Another week passes by. I go back in for a meeting. They go, you know what? It's still very popular right now. We're just going to keep you out of school until after the summer. And so I come and, you know, I was thinking I was going to continue my education after the summer. And then what they were really doing was they were waiting and waiting and waiting for the media cycle to change, for it to die down, to it not be a big deal, so that when they finally expelled me, you know, I couldn't run to a reporter or something.
Just to be clear, were they expelling you because you made a video? Right?
Yeah.
They could say you're breaching whatever school rules or something, or was it topic?
Well, you know, I've been asked that before, and as far as I'm concerned, you know, the school would say that I was excluded for recording a teacher, but I find it very interesting. You know, I was expelled. I was not allowed to return. I was not allowed to finish my education over that video, and what happened, and it stemmed from, you know, what the teacher did being wrong, and I felt I needed to record that. Almost, I wanted to expose it. And fair play, schools have these rules. You're not allowed to record teachers, and I understand that. But at the same time, I certainly think that the level they took it to with expelling me, not allowing me to return at all, it was definitely tied into the topic itself. Absolutely. During my time at that school, I had been aware of other people who had recorded videos they might not have been supposed to record, and their level of punishment was not nearly as severe. So I think the fact that I recorded was certainly part of the reason, but also certainly the topic itself. I think that's tied into it also.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's difficult to tell, but it's hard to imagine somebody who was promoting transgender ideology and showing up their teacher as a backward bigot would have been expelled at all. I would have thought, if you know what I mean. If it was if the role was reversed, if the teacher's opinion was the student's opinion, and they were challenging a so-called bigoted teacher, it's very difficult to imagine that there would have been possibly any punishment at all, potentially.
No, exactly. And yeah, and that's the thing. We hear the term all the time now, cancel culture, and it's like, you can get in trouble doing this, and this, and you'll be okay. But these certain categories, if you do those things, no, it's zero tolerance. And that's what I'm talking about when I tell you how I was expelled. And I think that's tied very specifically into the topic itself, the fact that it's a controversial thing that goes against this thing that is being pushed so hard now in Scottish schools, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, so I'm conscious of this, and I'm partly, I think this video is useful just to make it clear to people who don't really understand what's going on. But you said before that this stuff had been pushed in school already, right? So in what way was that pushed? Was this through a general climate or particular lessons, or?
Yeah, in my guidance class, so obviously you have various subjects, and it was the guidance class where the teacher would you know, where we would have, it's a mandatory class, you know, we couldn't opt out of this class, and it was in that class that these topics were brought up. And the reason you have to use the word push is because it's such a false ideology, this idea that there are more than two genders. It's so obviously false and wrong and completely incorrect. And so when you're a student and you're aware of that falsehood, when you see it, you can't help but feel it's being pushed on you because you know it's not true. And the only way that they can try and make people believe and buy into it is by forcing it, because any logical person that can look at it from an outside perspective is going to see it for exactly what it is, and that's lies. And I could go into that even further.
Had you tried to question this stuff in your guidance classes? Were you at least allowed to debate there?
In my own experience, honestly, when these types of things were being brought up in school, it was the type of thing you might look over at your friend and he might shake his head a little bit, but you just sort of bite the bullet and you just deal with it. And it's one of those things like, oh, here we go, this nonsense, you know? And most people obviously are okay with doing that. And I guess on that specific day, when I got kicked out of class, I wasn't okay with just dealing with it. You know, I wanted to call out the teacher for what he was doing, which was pushing something that's so clearly false and, in my opinion, really dangerous also.
Yeah, I agree. And what would you say, just from your experience? Obviously, you don't know every child in your school, but how many kids are buying it? Do they buy into it? I mean, surely some will buy into it, some will be completely against it, some I presume are middling. I don't know. What's your experience?
Well, it's interesting because, like I said, I was 17 when that video got made, and when I first entered into secondary school, it wasn't that big of a thing, and I sort of was there as it sort of came into the education, into the curriculum, if that makes sense. I noticed that as I was 13, 14, 15, it started to come more and more and more heavily. And so I think my generation, my age group, a lot of us saw it for what it was. They thought it was nonsense. But I also do think, as I saw some of the younger people come up who had it for a larger chunk of their education, they bought into it more as fact and, with certainty. When as my age group, I'm certain, I would actually say that the vast majority of people thought it was nonsense. Just from talking to people about it in the class. I think for the younger classes and the people, like I said, who have had it for longer, I think they buy into it quite heavily now, so, which is a shame.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And so you've now, you started to campaign around this issue, which is very interesting, or at least you've made yourself public and open to being interviewed. And I saw you on GB News, for example. What is it that you're doing?
Well, that video obviously went viral and it got a lot of traction and a lot of people were very interested in it. And at the time I was only 17 years old and I didn't want to go, do anything in the public eye, certainly. But a couple of years passed and the video still sort of held a level of significance for certain people on this topic because it highlights, like I said, sort of what's going on so well. And so after a couple of years had passed, I decided to use some of that traction that it got in order to do more things to highlight the issue. And so I had a great opportunity to do a couple of interviews and talk with people on the subject. And now I've done a couple of these street interviews, going out in the public and talking to people themselves. I was in the Glasgow Barris Pride Market. So we went there and we were interviewing people there, what they thought about Pride, what brought them to the event, how important they think it is. And honestly, the thing is, when you do that, it's fantastic because you just have to let these people talk. And it's so clear and evident how stupid it is. You don't have to paint the narrative. You just have to hold a microphone in front of these people and it just comes out. And I was also just recently down in Manchester doing the Pride event there. So I'm trying to bring a little bit of awareness, doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But I'm certainly very passionate about the topic. And because my video was what it was, I'm in a position a little bit more so where I can sort of talk to people and also raise awareness. And I'm trying to do that more and more,
Yeah. And have you had any feedback about what you're doing, negative, positive?
Well, it's interesting what you were saying earlier when you were saying the video is very entertaining, because, it's alarming and it's very scary, but these things are entertaining to see. And by interviewing people, I think, and using the traction that the video has, someone can be scrolling and they'll watch your video and it just highlights it. It shows the level of stupidity within these groups, what the movement is. And so that's what I'm trying to get into more and more, but I'm in the early stages of that,
Yeah. And just to finish off, I mean, this is a difficult question, but what would you say to other school pupils who are at school now facing the same kind of dogma and indoctrination that you were facing?
Well, it's difficult, you know, to students, because not everyone can be confrontational. Not every person can stand up and fight back against it, especially kids, you know, especially teenagers. But the big thing that I would say is people need to stop biting their lip, and people need to stop being quiet about this, because I'm of the utmost certainty that you know, we're a silent majority. I think most people in the UK, in Scotland, wherever it may be, I think the vast majority of people completely see the LGBTQ whatever agenda for exactly what it is, but everyone's very, very quiet about it. They don't want to talk about it. And because of this cancel culture that's existing, whether it's in schools, the workplace, or in entertainment, whatever it is, the consequences are so severe now for talking up against this. People can lose their jobs, you know, God knows what else. But I just say I didn't hold my lip. You know, I spoke up. I had to deal with consequences because of that. And I just think any man should do the same thing. Any person should do the same thing. If you think this stuff is false when you hear it out and about, when you're talking to your friends, champion that. You know what I mean? And because if you don't, it's just going to keep washing over everything. And
what would you say to, as I say, I come across some people who say, oh, the idea that this is a form of indoctrination in schools. What would you say to that? Because it seems quite clear to me.
It absolutely is indoctrination. They're pushing it even younger and younger and younger, and now kids have no choice but to take it on as fact. And I was saying, you know, when I was a kid, you know, if I heard something that a teacher said, and I was talking to my friends and they said, no, that's not true, I said, no, it's absolutely true, my teacher said it, you know. And kids and students hold what their teachers and schools say with such high regard, because that's their education. And I think it's so sad now that schools have incorporated this nonsense, this absolute dangerous nonsense, and kids are completely believing that, and they're gonna go into adulthood now, and they're gonna go into the world thinking it's absolute fact when it's anything but, you know. And it makes me very concerned, honestly, for the future. I think it's a massive issue, and it makes me kind of nervous, but also, like I said, I do think we are the silent majority, and I guess that gives me a lot of hope that eventually, over time, this ideology can be taken away from our culture, you know.
Great, yeah, I agree. There's a fight to be had, and I think we have to have it. If you want people to find you on Twitter or anywhere else, is there anywhere they can find you in particular?
Yeah, so most of the stuff I've done on this subject is on my Twitter, and that's _Murray Allan. So I'm on there, and all my social media, it's the same handle there. So if you want to find me, that's where I'll be. Okay,
and I'll thank Murray, and just to let people know that if they want to find us, they can look up Scottish Union for Education Substack, where we'll find all the articles. You can find Murray's video there under the video tab. And if you want to get in touch with us around this issue in particular, it's info@scottishunionforeducation.co.uk. Okay, thank you, Murray.
Thank you so much, Stuart.